I just got back from seeing the new biopic, Bob Marley One Love, directed by Reinaldo Marcus Green. This is the story of the life of Bob Marley, the legendary reggae singer that touched millions and millions during his life and left us all too soon. Now, when it comes to biopics, a lot of times when I go see them, I have somewhat familiarity with the artist. When it comes to Bob Marley, even though I'm familiar with his music, I don't know his life story that well. So going into this movie, I had a curiosity. At the same time, I had a bit of a fear because when it comes to doing a review about a movie like this, a lot of times the backbone of the review is how close was it to capturing the life of the person they're trying to capture. So how close was the movie in capturing the accuracy of the life of Bob Marley? And because I'm not familiar with his life as much as I am other artists, despite me respecting Bob Marley, that is a bit more difficult for me when it comes to this film. So, really, when I'm watching it to be intrigued and to be entertained. First and foremost, the man himself, Bob Marley, is played by Kingsley Ben-Adir. And I must say, Kingsley Ben-Adir did an absolute phenomenal job in capturing Bob Marley's essence. From the few interviews I've seen with him and specials, I remember seeing a few on VH1 when I was younger, learning more about Bob Marley, the way he would speak, his messages, and mostly his viewpoint on life. Bob Marley was an interesting character, man, because he seemed to be so, I don't want to say foolishly positive because that's not the right word, but it's hard to find a person like Bob Marley who, in many ways, was the stereotype for the chill, relaxed, stoic person. Very few things seem to bother Bob Marley throughout most of his life. We do see more emotion here in this film, because they're going into Bob Marley's private life as well, not just his public life. And as far as I see, though, Kingsley Ben-Adir did a pretty good job. Now, that being said, this is not a biopic covering the entire life of Bob Marley. It seems to pick up mostly from when he was rising to fame until, pretty much the end of his career. And it's interesting because they didn't cover his entire life, and a lot of these biopics do that, especially with artists who have passed away young. It didn't do that here, but I will tell you that there was something missing from this movie. The movie felt like it was trying to go somewhere and it didn't go somewhere. And while it did have a message, and the message in the film, the optimism in the film was mirroring the optimism of the real Bob Marley, the movie just had trouble maintaining my attention. Kingsley Ben-Adir's performance was great, and that's the backbone of this movie. That's really what makes this movie work. But ultimately, the movie does not work. There were a lot of scenes that I enjoyed that were interesting, but there's, as I'm watching the movie, I feel like they're trying to get somewhere and they don't quite get there. It feels like there's either deleted scenes or the movie is unfinished. When the movie ended, I felt like there was more. Not that they were setting up for a sequel, but I felt like there were important aspects that were cut out of his life. Now, from the movie. Now, the story of Bob Marley getting the cancer and stuff like that, like all of that was covered in the film, although maybe not as much as I was hoping it would have been because that was a pretty big deal. It wasn't like Bob Marley was, it wasn't like he died like a Tupac Shakur or like a John Lennon. His was different. And there have been a lot of conspiracy theories. That's how I first learned about Bob Marley and sort of his passing, was reading up on and watching documentaries and TV specials on these conspiracy theories about his death. There was a lot of theories that the FBI has something to do with it, that that it was a conspiracy from the government because he was creating this movement that was dangerous. I don't know. I couldn't even tell you. One thing I will say though that is comforting is that prior to the start of the movie, his son Ziggy Marley appears on screen, and ensures us that they did the best they could to capture Bob Marley's life as accurately as possible. And that is comforting because, like I said, I don't know Bob Marley's life like that to be able to make the comparison between how accurate it was. I just don't have that information. To me, the other big star of the film, I got to give credit to Latasha Lynch as Rita Marley. I never realized how important Rita Marley was to the story of Bob Marley. Rita Marley was the support system that he needed. Rita Marley was the person that continued to push him and continued to inspire him. And the film showed that Bob Marley was not just a guy who is a sort of a loner. That like there were aspects of his life where he did feel very isolated, and they do cover that well in the film. They do cover sort of that strange loneliness that Bob Marley had, that introversion that he had. But Rita Marley was like there to make sure that he would continue his path to greatness. I feel like those two actors and those two characters are pretty much the movie, but the movie itself, I think, needed more than that. I think that while they're great, and I could, if they ever do any more Bob Marley biopics, you're going to have to find people that are as good, if not better, and that's going to be tough. I think they were kind of made to play these characters, and Bob Marley, that's a human being that has some very, very big shoes to fill. Very, very big shoes to fill. I went to see this movie at the 12:45 showing, noon, and the movie theater was pretty packed. I can honestly tell you that there's very few movies that I've seen in the afternoon during a weekday that were that packed. You normally see the packed theaters for a big Marvel movie or something like that in the evening time or the first showings. I went to go see this in Dolby, and the place was not entirely full, but maybe like 80% full, and that's rare for a showing that early, but clearly people wanted to see this movie. But again, it feels like it's missing something. This movie was shorter than a lot of the other biopics that have come out recently, and it's one of those things where I don't want to be a hypocrite here. I do feel like movies need to be shorter. I'm kind of worn out on the 2.5 hour, 3 hour, cinematic, overdoneness. I don't know. I've said that before, but like the story of Bob Marley, they were sort of on the way to achieving greatness, and then something just stopped it from happening. And I feel like the story of Bob Marley probably needed a bit more time. And I think it needed a bit more context. The movie's also structured to where when you watch it, it already gets to the point where Bob Marley's already made, and then it has flashbacks. And I just feel like that didn't work here. And I also feel like maybe if the movie was recut in a better way, I think depending on what they have shot and what the latest scenes are, I genuinely wonder if you could take this movie, cut it up a little bit, re-edit it, and maybe it'll be better. It just didn't hit me like other biopics did. Bohemian Rhapsody or even Selena from the 90s. La Bamba, of course, legendary. I went into this expecting that level of a movie, that's going to hit me hard, and I didn't get it. And it's a bummer. So this is a movie I suggest you wait for streaming for. If you're a big Bob Marley fan, like a massive one, to be honest, I still kind of think you should probably just wait. So that's my opinion. I'm going to go see Madam Web at some point, which I hear is terrible. I'm a glutton for punishment. We'll see. Take care, y'all. Have a good one.